In the previous video, we have seen that object transform is based on its pivot point. Now let's see what we are currently transforming. As a Blender user and a 3D artist, you know that in space we are using the X, Y, and Z axis to move our objects. We can find the representation of those axes on the grid, with the X and Y axis being those red and green lines, and also on the view widget on the top right corner that allow us to switch to the different views. When an object is not transformed, its position is aligned with the world origin. As soon as we input some values into its X coordinate, for example, it will slide moving along the X world axis. And it will behave the same whether we are playing with the Y or Z value. There is no limitation to those values. They can be positive or negative, and our object will move left to right, up and down, or front and back depending on those. If I enter a value of 1 and 1 on X and Z, we can see our object offset from the center of our scene. When it comes to rotation, we don't rotate along an axis, but around an axis. If I rotate around the X-axis, I can see my X rotation value changing, and my object is currently rotating around the red arrow. And as always, the origin of the object is used as the origin of the rotation. If you have difficulties understanding on which axis you are going to rotate, you can activate the rotation gizmo that make it more obvious. If I now perform a scaling pressing S and constrain it on the X-axis pressing X, you can see that I'm scaling my object along the selected axis. The same on the Y-axis here or on the Z-axis. So scaling is along the object axis. One last option that is available for object is delta transform. When I go into the object properties, I can see this delta transform panel that looks like the classic transform panel. Delta transforms behave the same way as transform, but they are added on top of your transformation. So you can see here, when I add a delta transform of 1 and 1 on top of my 1 and 1 classic transform, my object is offset to the position 2 on X and 2 on Z. To be honest, I almost never use the delta transform, and I don't think we will be using it during this course. It can be useful whenever you want to offset an existing object animation, for example. Let's say you have animated an up and down motion and you want to easily offset it on the side. Using the delta transform will make your life easier. But there are other ways to do it, and we will see that during the course. To summarize, we have seen that location transformation and scaling are done along the axis, while rotation is done around the axis. And we can offset an animation using delta transform.